Hello, everyone, and welcome to the EV Geek podcast, where we dive into the latest and greatest in the world of electric vehicles and sustainable energy. We're your hosts, Joel and Sebastian, and today we are launching our new weekly series that we're calling EV Pulse. The goal of EV Pulse is to recap some of the biggest stories in EVs and energy from the week. So I hope you enjoy this very first episode of EV Pulse. Let's dive in. All right, so our headline topic for the week is that Hyundai has announced the refreshed Ioniq 5 for 2025. I'm pretty excited about this one. There's not a whole lot of major changes, but it's, a bunch of little changes that add up into kind of a really big change. So what is it? So first off, there's a new trim level, the XRT, which is a off-road model. It includes an almost 1-inch lift, that at least there's something there, as well as all-terrain tires, and it's only available in all-wheel drive, and it gets some exclusive kind of styling tweaks. I'm a little indifferent on the actual styling of it. It's kind of a black digital camo that they put on the front bumper and the rear bumper. I don't know. It kind of, on one hand, I think it looks cool. On the other hand, it makes it look cheap. But that's just me. It's also going to be the first Hyundai EV to launch with a native NACS port. And I also believe it might be the first just non-Tesla in the US to have native NACS, which is pretty sweet. It's still unknown, and I'm still questioning, how it's going to perform on Tesla superchargers, since they don't currently support high voltage cars. Currently with the EGMP cars, they end up limited at a pretty low kilowatt because they're using the rear motor's inverter to boost the voltage up. So I'd be curious to know if maybe Hyundai thought about this and maybe beefed up the inverter and just didn't tell anybody, or I don't know. I'm just curious to know how they're kind of handling that. As part of it, they're also slightly increasing battery size across the board. So in the standard range cars, you're going from 58 to 63 kilowatt hours. And in the long range cars, you're going from 77.4 to 84 kilowatt hours, which is cool. And finally, this is something that everyone should be excited about. They're adding a rear wiper. I don't know what it is with these EV manufacturers and not putting rear wipers on cars, but I'm glad to see maybe they're moving away from it.
So yeah, I'm excited about this. I'm excited that the one thing I'm excited about is Hyundai they keep updating and just updating their brand for EVs. That's what I'm excited about. I'm excited about the NACS, but yeah, you're going to be limited if they don't figure out how to split the pack whenever they charge or figure out something with charging. You're going to be limited to 50 to 100 kilowatts at a supercharging station, which is no bueno. So yeah, I'm curious to how they will figure out the charging thing, but I'm glad to see NACS is going to be standard on other cars. I really thought they would be the last automaker to kind of adopt NACS, but it's good to see them be the first one.
Yeah. And also just to note, I didn't have it written down, but this is also going to be the first vehicle produced at the new Georgia plant for Hyundai, which means it should qualify for at least a little bit of that federal tax credit starting for 2025, which is exciting because that's kind of been one of the kickers for Hyundai Kia cars. Is now, while they've done awesome incentives to kind of negate it, but they haven't qualified for tax credits up to now. So this is kind of an awesome change, and then bringing manufacturing to the U.S., more U.S. jobs, yada yada yada, all good things.
So true. And we're going to continue with Hyundai because the Ioniq 5 achieved U.S. record sales in August. So demand for Hyundai's best-selling EV continues to climb. The Hyundai Ioniq 5 set a new August U.S. sales record ahead of the updated 2025 model that Sebastian just talked about, which will arrive at dealerships this fall. This is a record-setting August for Hyundai in total and retail sales, Hyundai American CEO Randy Parker announced on Wednesday. Hyundai has had its best ever total and retail August sales month in the U.S. with 79,278 vehicles sold, up 22% from last year. Hybrids did lead the retail group, climbing 81%, but EVs still managed to be up 27%. The growth comes after Kia, Hyundai's sister brand, broke its U.S. sales record in August for the second straight month. So we had a previous episode on this. Hyundai and Kia are kicking it right now. Hyundai's Ioniq 5 set a new August record with retail sales surging 74%. Hyundai sold 4,838 Ioniq 5s in the U.S. last month, bringing the total to nearly 27,000 through August of 2024, up 26% from the 21,348 sold last year. The electric SUV continues seeing higher demand despite the updated 2025 model mentioned earlier launching later this fall.
So yeah, no big surprises for me here. Just We just did an episode about it, and if you want to hear of my thoughts on that, just go watch that, because it would be largely the same as what I'd say now. It's just when you make good cars, people buy them. Right?
That is true. That is true.
All right. Headphones keep trying to fall out of my ear. So, next topic. Tesla has officially launched Actually Smart Summon, which they are being very childish and using an acronym for.
And what's that acronym? I don't understand what you're talking about. What's that acronym?
It's a 3-letter word, starts with A, has 2 S's in it.
Looks like it's ASS. Gotcha. Okay.
Got it.
Yep.
So for me, this is cool, but really they're just finally re-enabling a feature that Tesla used to sell on their cars. And people are really excited about it, which, I mean, rightfully so. They're finally getting a feature that they were promised when they bought their car and then hasn't been there. But ultimately, this is just them compensating now finally for moving away from ultrasonics to a vision-only system. It seems to have the same range limitation as the original version, so you can't do it from super far away. You're not to the point yet where your car can drive from New York to Los Angeles or whatever, as some people have claimed.
Yes.
It does run on the new V12 FSD stack, which seems to be pretty intelligent. I've seen some users note that they were parallel parked, and when they parked, maybe they had good room front and back, and when they wanted to leave, people had parked closer. And when they tried to do the summit, it actually put it in reverse, kind of nosed out before actually pulling out of the parking spot, which is pretty sweet. I mean, that's actually highly, intelligent. And I'm sure it probably scared them the first time they did it, because why is my car going backwards? But yeah, it just seems like it's a cool advancement. I'm not as excited as I think a lot of Tesla owners are. Maybe I'm just,
So yeah, as a Tesla owner, this is basically just a party gimmick or a part of the trick. No one really uses it. I mean, I've never been in a store and said, "Oh, it's raining. Let me use my smart summon to come pick me up." Never done it. I've probably done it in a parking lot once or twice to show it off to someone, but it's pretty much a gimmick. It's cool to have. I like to see where they kind of go with this. Maybe we'll get to the point where you can summon a car from New York to LA, which would be pretty cool. So yeah.
Yeah.
So talking about Honda EV sales, which is something we don't usually talk about because there's no such thing as Honda EV sales, but Honda EV sales are booming according to the automaker. Honda set a sales record in August with 28% of its sales coming from hybrids or electric models. You're going to hear that word a lot, hybrids or electric models. Honda was slow to launch a long-range EV, and when it did, it simply just partnered with GM and their Ultium platform, took the Blazer, took some logos off, and put some Honda logos on it. So yeah, basically the Honda Prologue is the Chevy Blazer reimagined, or just, it's the same thing. Most of those Honda cars that were sold in August were hybrids. All-electric Prologue is off to a strong start with 5,401 deliveries in August alone. I say that's pretty impressive. You have a lot of Honda brand loyalists out there who are going to go for this car. Speaking of this and the Hyundai, it already outsold the Hyundai Ioniq 5 and Kia EV6 last month, fairly. But we'll have to see if Honda can hold on to that momentum after its initial wave of buyers and those who were brand loyalists.
So yeah, I'm a little surprised. I've not driven a Honda Prologue yet. If anyone sees this, I'll take one.
Have you driven a Chevy Blazer?
No, I haven't yet.
Be the same
but I imagine it's very similar.
Yes.
And that's kind of what I was going to get at. Is just, from everything I've seen about the car, it's not bad. It's also not necessarily amazing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But of course, that's kind of not. I'm going to make some people angry with this. Probably, it's kind of what Honda's known for.
Mm-hmm.
They make good cars, but they're appliances essentially. Usually,
yep.
Now every automaker has a couple cars that are kind of their halo cars, flagship cars, whatever, that maybe are more sporty or more fun to drive. Your Honda Civic is just an appliance, but then there's the Civic Type R. The Civic
mm-hmm.
Type R is a fun, fast, super raw sports car.
Mm-hmm.
You can do that, but generally speaking, I think the Honda Prologue is honestly probably pretty good at being a Honda, even though it's not really a Honda.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just Honda enough to actually attract buyers that are typically your typical Honda buyer. So yeah, I think it's not super surprising when it's doing well. I hope it keeps doing well, because maybe that'll give Honda a bit more of a kick to, continue developing their own EV platforms. Since I think they've already kind of killed the Ultium partnership, they're not going to do another model. Or maybe they will. Who knows? Businesses are always changing. But all right. This is a more energy-related topic. The U.S. government has opened 31 million acres of land for solar installations. So in January, the BLM, the Bureau of Land Management, had a recommendation for 22 million acres. So they've actually bumped it up a little, a decent bit since then to 31 million acres. They're adding 5 additional states to this: Idaho, Montana, Oregon, and Washington. The original 6 were Utah, Arizona, California, Nevada, Colorado, and New Mexico. The goal of this is to essentially just make the permitting process easier for these solar installs, right? They're basically already giving the go-ahead that if a developer wants to put a solar field on this land, they can do it. They don't have to go through all the lengthy permitting process and, maybe all of the environmental studies or whatever. And so it should make it easier to kind of build these super big installs that are closer to transmission lines while avoiding, protected lands or cultural resources or important wildlife habitats. So far in 2024, they've permitted 29 gigawatts of solar production, which is pretty strong. But it is important to note that currently fossil fuels have access to 80 million acres of this public land. So that's, around 2.5 times as much.
So yeah, I'm glad to hear the story. I'm glad to see these more solar farms start popping up. We're in Arkansas here. We've actually had quite a few pop up in Western Arkansas. Some big ones, as many of you don't know. Arkansas has an initiative to close all of its coal plants, I believe, by 2026, 2028. I can remember. So both coal plants in Arkansas would need to be closed by then. And to offset that, they were building solar to offset that power need or offset that grid need. So excited about this. Hopefully, we see a lot more of these popping up around the country. And now we're heading over to Sweden, when Sweden automaker Volvo has scrapped its plans to sell all electric vehicles by 2030. So Volvo Cars, a Geely-owned automaker, has abandoned their near-term goal of selling only electric vehicles, citing the need, and we keep hearing this, to be flexible. That was our word of the week this week. And pragmatic. That's a new one. Amid changing market conditions around electric vehicles, Geely stated that it now aims for 90 to 100% of its cars to be fully electric or plug-in hybrid models by 2030. The target replaces a 2021 pledge from Volvo Cars lineup to be fully electric by the end of the decade.
So yeah, I'm not too surprised by this. It seems to be kind of what everyone's doing. They're kind of moving the goalposts back. I, would love to see them actually commit and do it, but I think at this point, from a business stance, maybe it doesn't make as much sense. I think we've discussed this before, that the sales maybe aren't booming in the way they want. Although all these headlines in this week seem to be that booming. Sales are surged 50%.
Yeah,
we're about to do one that's 160%.
Yep.
So maybe they are accelerating now quicker than they want. We're about to see how maybe flexible these automakers actually are.
Yes.
Because on that topic, Ford F-150 Lightning sales surged 160% for August. So, I mean, that's a pretty big jump. Now, despite the surge, Ford's gas-powered cars and trucks still accounted for 86% of their sales last month.
Boo.
But, I mean, that is a surge. You can't say that there is not growth in the EV sector if you're going to continually push numbers, the growth. Anyway, electric vehicle sales have rose 28.9% total to 8,944 units. The F-150 Lightning accounted for most of that growth of 2,858 units sold, which is up 160% compared to August of last year. Mustang Mach-E saw some modest growth with 5,341 units sold in August, which is up 6% year over year. And in total, they have sold 32,167 Mach-E's so far this year.
So yeah, so good news from Ford. We like hearing some good news for Ford. We just did an episode about their EV plans. So they're kind of backtracking a little, as all these other automakers doing. I'm curious about this one number. They sold 2,858 units, which was up 160% from last year. I'm assuming they really didn't sell any last year. If you sold 2,800, and that's up 160%. So I don't know if that's when Ford was kind of, pausing on their trucks to do some maintenance work at the plant or something like that. I don't know. That just seems to be a big increase for just 2,800.
Yeah, I think if I'm remembering right, which my timeline might be off, the August of last year, I think we were kind of in between 2023, 2024 model years, which the 2024 model year F-150 Lightnings were delayed a decent bit for whatever reason. And so that might be kind of part of it, is there were just less stock. There was less stock on the ground this time last year, is my assumption, but who knows?
Totally agree with you on that. All right, heading over to China now, BYD, which we don't talk a lot about here in the US, was the third best-selling brand in the world this July. So if you're not aware, BYD is a Chinese-only manufacturer. They sell basically 100% EVs and plug-in hybrid vehicles. They sold 315,600 cars in July. 315,600 cars in July globally, just second behind the big guns of Toyota and Volkswagen. So according to its August earnings call, 2/3 of those sales were hybrid vehicles. Despite a great performance in July, BYD is only 8th place in overall sales for the year so far. BYD, as I stated, no longer sells pure ICE vehicles. They are strictly a hybrid and EV manufacturer. So these sale numbers come from plug-in hybrids, EVs, and hybrid models, making inroads in both China and abroad. But according to reporting from Fast Technology, BYD holds a close third place at that 315,000 mark. Looking at other EV owners, Tesla was 13th with 112,400 units sold globally this past July.
Yeah, so BYD is a giant, and this is kind of, not to get on this topic, but when we see the U.S. and Canada now implementing 100% tariffs on Chinese EVs, this is part of the reason why. Is there's some fear that if we start selling Chinese EVs in North America at the prices that you can sell Chinese EVs at in other countries, our domestic automakers might not have a chance. The way the government has combated that is just saying, oh, well, we're just going to mark them up 100%. Yep. Anyway, that's a topic for a different day.
Yes,
but this is kind of this is where the logic's coming from. Is they're the third biggest. Yeah, they're the third biggest automaker in the world, or in the world recently. Like, that's crazy.
I mean, it's nuts. Yeah, just to kind of elaborate on a little. I mean, you're talking BYD selling new cars, brand new EVs with good range, $15,000, $20,000, $25,000. I mean, if that hit U.S. soil, and like I said, we'll talk about this on another episode, it'd be game over some of our legacy automakers knowing that they could sell those at that price. It's not if, it's when. They will get here eventually, whether it be through back doors of Mexico or something like that. They're going to get here eventually. So I hope some of our legacy automakers kind of
it is important to note, of course, they can only sell cars that cheap because they can only sell cars that cheap because they are subsidized by the Chinese government. I mean, majorly, 100%.
Yes.
But again, different topic for a different day.
That's right. And our last topic, what is it for the day, Sebastian? It's a good one.
It is that the 2019 Jaguar I-Pace was recalled over battery fire risk. So according to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, this is the 5th time the 2019 I-Pace has been recalled for the same problem. That's crazy. The bigger issue here is that there is no permanent fix for the problem.
So you just park
the 2019
outside,
I-Pace, it's like the problem persists. 3 reports of battery fire so far in the U.S. coming even after the latest fix, which, 3 is not a lot, but you have to remember they didn't sell a ton of these vehicles in the first place.
No, they did not.
Because in the most recent recall dated August 23rd, the automaker advised owners to park and charge vehicles outside until the repair is complete, and for an additional 30 days after the repair is made, which just sounds to me they don't think the repairs might actually fix it. Of course, the repair doesn't exist yet.
Yep.
They're doing a temporary fix where they're going to do the limit your state of charge to 80% and probably do some monitoring, but it's just crazy. This is affecting 2,760 vehicles, again, not a ton, that were manufactured between January 5th, 2018 and March 14th, 2019. Now, Joel, do you know, are these LG packs?
That I do not know. I'm assuming they probably are. I mean, these are the same packs that we had the issues with the bolts, because this is the same thing they asked bolt owners to do: park outside and don't charge over 80%. You know that you were bolt owner. Same thing they told them. I would assume these would probably be the same LG packs on those 2700
because I think the Hyundai Kona and Niro had similar things as well. Yep. It's just interesting.
It is very interesting, which is why this is one of the cars that made our worst, or one of the cars you need to avoid buying EV list. So stay away from the Jaguar I-Pace. You kind of have to now because they're no longer making it. All right. That will wrap it up for today, Friday, September 6th, and our first episode of the EV Pulse. Thanks for tuning into today's electric vehicle news roundup from the EV Geek podcast. We cover some exciting developments from the latest in EV technology, news, and new vehicle releases. Be sure to subscribe to the EV Geek on YouTube and tap on that notification icon for more detailed podcast episodes. If you have any thoughts or questions, drop them in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Stay charged up, and we'll see you next week on another EV Pulse episode. So long, everyone.